वीकेंड है, पर दोस्तों कल से द मेन राउंड यानी कि द सुपर 12 राउंड, द ग्रुप स्टेज ऑफ द T20 वर्ल्ड कप इज स्टार्टिंग। तो जैसे कि आप जानते हैं, अगर आप जुड़े हैं मेरे साथ यहाँ पे पिछले पूरे हफ्ते से या उससे ज्यादा शायद, ऑल्सो लास्ट 4 or 5 shows we've been talking about how is this T20 वर्ल्ड कप गोइंग टू पैन आउट। हमारे पिछले शो में जो मेरे गेस्ट थे, हम दोनों ने बात किया था या हमने चर्चा किया था कि इज दिस गोइंग टू बी द मोस्ट अनप्रिडिक्टेबल T20 वर्ल्ड कप येट, बिकॉज जो हमने देखा है अभी यहाँ पे इन द लीग स्टेजेस, a lot of upsets. I mean, right now Ireland is on the verge of beating West Indies. एक टाइम पे लग रहा था कि वेस्ट इंडीज और श्रीलंका इतने अनुभवी टीम्स, वेस्ट इंडीज 2 बार ये ट्रॉफी जीत चुकी है और श्रीलंका 3 बार फाइनल तक पहुंच चुकी है. These teams would easily top their groups, but Sri Lanka struggled. They lost to Namibia. And then they had a scare against UAE जब एक fast bowler Mayappan ने hat trick लिया था. But they did rebound. They managed to hold off Netherlands and they managed to get into the second round, and they did end up number one in their qualifying group. पर आसान बात नहीं था श्रीलंका के लिए. और अब हम देख रहे हैं कि वेस्ट इंडीज ऑटोमेटिकली नंबर 1 पे नहीं है. आयरलैंड इज ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ बीटिंग देम. तो इसके चलते मुझे लग रहा है कि ये जो सुपर 12 राउंड कल से शुरू होने वाला है, यहाँ भी बहुत बहुत उतार चढ़ाव, ऊपर नीचे होने वाला है. वी हैव अ कमेंट हियर. मास्टर पूछ रहे हैं हाउ आर यू. मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ मास्टर जी, आप बताइए आप कैसे हैं. अगर आप लोग स्ट्रीम पे जुड़े हैं तो लाइक लाइक ठोकिए, हेलो हेलो बोलिए, कुछ भी आपसे पूछना है, मुझसे पूछना है, आप पूछ सकते हैं. और मेरे साथ जुड़ने वाले हैं बस कुछ ही मिनट में गुरकीरत सिंह गिल, वेरी वेरी फाइन क्रिकेट एनालिस्ट and host of the podcast on YouTube, Gupshup with Gill. He's also visible on cricket.com doing watch alongs. He does some video analysis there. पहले भी जुड़ चुके हैं मेरे साथ गुरकीरत सिंह गिल. I always enjoy speaking to him. We've interacted here on this show as well as on YouTube on another Glance and Reposo streamer Saurabh Pant's channel. Always a pleasure to get him. He'll be on the show any second now. तो जैसे कि मैंने कहा था, अगर आपके पास कुछ सवाल हो, कुछ भी कमेंट है, आपको हाय बोलना है, आपको पीछे बैकग्राउंड के बारे में कुछ पूछना है, कुछ कहना है, बट आई वुड लव टू गेट योर क्वेश्चंस एंड कमेंट्स ऑन द T20 वर्ल्ड कप सुपर 12 राउंड जो कल शुरू होने वाला है ऑस्ट्रेलिया में विद होस्ट्स एंड डिफेंडिंग चैंपियंस ऑस्ट्रेलिया मीटिंग लास्ट ईयर्स रनर्स अप न्यूजीलैंड. उसके बाद अफगानिस्तान इंग्लैंड का भी मैच है. लेकिन मैं समझ सकता हूं कि आप में से सारे व्यूअर जो जुड़े हैं या जुड़ने वाले हैं मेरे साथ इस शो पे, आप भी इंतजार कर रहे हैं इंडिया वर्सेस पाकिस्तान परसों का मैच जो मेलबर्न क्रिकेट ग्राउंड, द आइकॉनिक एमसीजी द जी पे खेला जाएगा, अगर जो बारिश ने, लानीनिया ने साथ दिया तो. इसी बात पे परफेक्ट टाइमिंग, गुरकीरत सिंह गिल इज इन द हाउस. आई एम गोना ब्रिंग ऑन गुरकीरत ऑन द शो और फिर हम बिना किसी रुकावट के हम इस क्रिकेट चर्चा को शुरू करेंगे. लेट्स सी इफ गुरकीरत इज गेटिंग ऑन द शो राइट नाउ. Yes, he is here. Good afternoon, Bhaji. कैसे हो?
बढ़िया बढ़िया.
Good
Did
to
you
have you back, man.
expect this result?
I I'll say I'm not entirely surprised. I thought the way कि जिस तरह वेस्ट इंडीज की टीम ने लास्ट मैच में जिम्बाब्वे को पेला, I would say by 31 runs. I thought they do better, but again, I mean, Paul Sterling, you know यार कि जब Paul Sterling फॉर्म में आते हैं तो what he can do. और अब तक अगर मैं फैंटेसी लीग के बारे में बात करूं, I always have him as my vice captain. He does nothing. आज मैंने उनको ड्रॉप किया था, तो now Paul Sterling finally gets a match winning 50. I'm not entirely surprised, but जैसे कि I was telling our viewers before you joined, at one point बहुत सारे लोगों ने ये कहा होगा कि यार वेस्ट इंडीज अपनी ग्रुप टॉप करेगी और श्रीलंका अपनी ग्रुप टॉप करेगी. श्रीलंका टॉप इट, बट इट वाज नॉट इजी, एंड नाउ वी आर सीइंग वेस्ट इंडीज नॉट गेटिंग देयर. हाउ सरप्राइज्ड आर यू बाय द वे दिस क्वालिफाइंग राउंड हैज पैन्ड आउट, गुरकीरत?
Not as surprised as what many are, because if you look at the numbers, no batter in that Sri Lanka lineup has a T20I numbers in the last 2 years of a combination where they are averaging 30
Right.
and have a strike rate of more than 135. Bhanuka Rajapaksa has an average of 29 and a strike rate of 140. Everyone else is less than that. तो अगर आपके स्पेशलिस्ट बैटर्स आर नॉट इवन एवरेजिंग 30, like I think regardless of whatever your strike rate may be, you need your top 5 specialist batters to average 30, right? They're specialist batters, they are not your tail enders or lower order hitters. आपको उनसे उतनी runs की requirement चाहिए. So I wasn't surprised. And given how the ground dimensions are, like
Correct.
Also, if West Indies would have been playing in Geelong, they would have struggled even more. यहाँ पर तो I thought last game also they could have very easily lost if Zimbabwe had not committed some sort of a harakiri. Last match between Zimbabwe and West Indies was only about which team can make the more mistakes, right? Because
Yeah.
starting from that run out of Charles, followed by the batting order, like Odion Smith hardly played 2 3 balls. Akil Hussain came ahead of him, and then short boundaries पे आप Pavel को Muzarbani was bowling short balls at a slower pace to Pavel, and Pavel's one of the better hitters of pace bowling in West Indies lineup. He was pulling Bumrah for a six in front of square in Wankhede, and he ऐसा नहीं कि वो six छोटा मोटा six था, it was a 90-meter six, so you can't take that risk with Pal. So that was a mistake. Then the bowling changes. I mean Nicholas Puran's captaincy has been shocking to say the least. Last match he made the mistake. You didn't expect him to make the same mistake again. Joseph is bowling in the third over. And आज भी आप देखो, then Odion Smith is coming ahead to bowl off Jason Holder. You can see the match is slipping out of your hand. Why are you trying to slip in overs of your part-time bowler or your fifth or sixth bowler? Get someone who can give you wickets. And Jason Holder has the record for most power play wickets in this year's in T20 IS or West Indies.
बिल्कुल.
Then Obed Mokoy hasn't bowled after the fifth over at all. So Nicholas Puran's captaincy has been all over the place. It's just like he's like basic cricketing intelligence. I know some West Indies fans might think that I'm being harsh, but
नहीं,
it
but
is the truth. You can't be making the same mistakes repeatedly again and again. So that is there. And Sri Lanka also, yes, they have qualified, but it's not that Sri Lanka have been clinical. आपको पता होता है, it's not the first time that net run rate is a factor.
yeah.
When Sri Lanka realized that okay, they are getting behind in the game, they didn't even try to get close to Namibia's target. That loss of 55 runs, had Namibia won yesterday, Sri Lanka would have ended up in India's group, and that wouldn't have favored Sri Lanka. Now Sri Lanka are going to play England and New Zealand in Sydney, which is the most favorable ground any Asian team can ask for, and they
Correct.
will play Afghanistan in Perth. Again, वहां पर their batters become more skillful. They have extra pace. Had they ended up in different group, instead of playing Afghanistan at Perth, they had to play Pakistan at Perth, and that would have turned into a no contest given Pakistan's pace bowling attack, and
बिल्कुल.
they had to play India in Sydney as opposed to playing England and New Zealand. तो जहां आपको दो मैच मिलते वहां एक मिलता, और एक भी ऐसी टीम के साथ मिलता जो आपके पेस bowling attack को न्यूट्रलाइज कर देती. And then you will play then you had to play at South Africa and Adelaide, and I think South Africa में तो अभी इतनी quality है that they would have beaten them
Sure.
regardless of which venue they play at. So these are the things that teams have to think. Now both Sri Lanka and West Indies, see, there's obviously an issue of skill set and a lack of experience of playing in Australian grounds where you just can't see ball and hit ball. But I think you expect better from test nations than displaying very little game awareness and very poor percentage cricket. I just think both teams, Sri Lanka, despite winning the two games, especially with the ball,
Yeah.
and they've lacked game awareness. कल एक बहुत अच्छी चीज़ जो श्रीलंका के बैटर्स कर रहे थे, and I thought Netherlands was at fault over here. Sri Lanka, I think, hit 15 boundaries. Only one boundary in Geelong did the hit was down the ground. Everything else was on the shorter side. Kushal Mendes, I think, out of his 78 runs, scored 64 runs square of the wicket. तो वहां पर नेदरलैंड्स की भी गलती हुई, एंड श्रीलंका डिडंट मेक द सेम मिस्टेक until the last 3 overs where they allowed Max Shodau to hit that shorter boundary. And again, these are the few things. So I'm not surprised with Sri Lanka's and West Indies batting struggling that much, because West Indies के भी आप देखो, Nicholas Puran, I think in the last 8 innings has had 50 runs in total, and in last 11 innings he's averaging 11. Hetmeyer was their best batter for the conditions. He's not there.
It's not there.
Johnson Charles को आप ले आए out of nowhere. You got in Raymond Reefer, uh, and very surprising is that they left out Romario Shepherd. That is a huge surprise for me that he didn't make the squad. uh, Yannick Carrier they selected in place of Hayden Walsh Jr. Yannick Carrier का कोई experience ही नहीं है. He's 30 years old. So a lot of mistakes they had already made before they boarded the plane to Australia. That is there. But even then, you would have expected them to at least reach the qualifying round. But आई एम हैप्पी दे मेन रहा हूँ, आई एम हैप्पी बिकॉज दिस ब्रिंग्स टू द फोर की T20 में जो गैप है between the lower ranked teams and the associate teams, it is not that much. And I'll go on to record and say this, that if Bangladesh had played the qualifying round, they would have struggled to qualify, because in the last 1 year, Bangladesh has played 27 T20 internationals and they have won only six. And
Yep.
those six wins, one has come against Oman, last World T20, one against PNG, last World T20, one against UAE, uh, one against one against Zimbabwe, and one against Afghanistan और एक और है. So they've not beaten any top eight team
It's their
in the
worst
last.
year.
So they would have, Bangladesh would have struggled to qualify, and I wouldn't have been surprised. And I still don't, I don't think that Bangladesh are going to win a single game in the main round.
I can see where you're coming from. Exactly the same thing I was talking about with somebody else. And then when I sat down to do my preview, I realized, and the same number which you raised, मैंने कहा यार इस टीम का ये arguably सबसे खराब 12 महीना 15 महीना चल रहा है इस फॉर्मेट में. A lot of their top journalists I see on my Facebook page, my Twitter page, वो कह रहे हैं कि भाई ये फॉर्मेट आप लोग छोड़ दो because you sunk to a new low. So I'm on the same page with you. I do not see them winning. I'm sorry if there are any Bangladesh fans watching here, but Gurkirat, you just touched upon something which I feel is very pertinent. कि जो गैप जो है ना अब क्या होता है द वाइड स्प्रेड इंडियन ऑडियंस और इवन द ग्लोबल ऑडियंस हम क्योंकि हम बहुत कम देखते हैं इन टीमों को जैसे कि हमारे स्क्रीन पे है यू नो एंड नमीबिया नेदरलैंड्स आई थिंक वी सी आयरलैंड मोर it is that same factor, the unfamiliarity factor, which allows these teams to come up. And I'm going to use the word surprise these teams, but in लोग के लिए वो surprise एक सेकंड मेरा लाइव शो है अभी मैंने नहीं एक सेकंड सॉरी got a
It's
live
okay.
show. Someone's come from Amazon for a return ticket. My fault. I knew he's coming, and I kept it here in the same room. ठीक है. So
Bas,
I'm
कोई
saying,
बात
so these teams, you get where I'm going, right? This team fully expected to make the Super 12s. That is Namibia, and heartbreaking scenes. I mean, कल David Visa का जो एक drained look था, वो क्या करता? But this gap which has been closed, what do you attribute to? Because we know in लोग के back stories क्या है. They come from humble backgrounds. हम पढ़ते हैं कि कोई Amazon delivery है तो कोई ये. But when they come together, you can see that gulf being narrowed. What do you put that down to?
Uh, I think maybe a little bit of desperation makes it comes into play, because uh, they know. See, abhi, like if we get into specifics, any of the team that wins, any of the associate teams that wins a single match, right? They get a fund of 40,000 USD, right? अब 40,000 USD एशिया में जो क्रिकेट फैंस बैठे हैं, ये क्या है, ये तो इट्स नॉनसेंस. लाइक इस 40,000 क्या है, इट्स नथिंग. बट now you see what it does for Netherlands. They won two games, so that is an 80,000 reserve. And qualifying to the Super 12s also has a prize money. And now also one other thing that you have to see is ki why Netherlands have improved this year is because you look at the amount of cricket that Netherlands have played this year. They've played series against West Indies, ODI series, T20 नहीं.
Correct,
They
correct.
played they played against New Zealand, they played against England, and I think they also played against South Africa. नेदरलैंड्स और आयरलैंड को छोड़ के कोई ऐसी टीम है नहीं जिसने बड़ी टीमों को खेला है. इवन इफ वी
Pakistan
टेक,
also.
या पाकिस्तान ऑल्सो, यस आई फॉरगॉट. अब स्कॉटलैंड है एंड नमीबिया है, तो दे नमीबिया हैजंट प्लेड a lot since the last World T20, and in fact Namibia was playing a series against Uganda, and even Uganda beat Namibia in one of the games. So you realize कि एक तो why matches for these smaller teams need to happen with a lot with a lot more top nations is one, they will improve, गेम अवेयरनेस बढ़ेगी. कहीं ना कहीं जो डेविड वीजे ने कल इनिंग्स खेली, it also had to do with game awareness, because now he's gained that experience of playing in the CPL, of playing in the PSL, playing in the 100 NatWest T20 Blast. So you learn that way. तो बाकी प्लेयर्स को उतना ऑप्शन नहीं मिलता. स्कॉटलैंड एंड आयरलैंड, सॉरी आयरलैंड, स्कॉटलैंड एंड नेदरलैंड्स के कुछ प्लेयर्स काउंटीज में खेल लेते हैं, सो दे इंप्रूव. लाइक रायन डेंडस्कार्टे वाज अ परफेक्ट एग्जांपल ऑफ दिस. देयर इज अ रीजन he ended with a average of 59 or 60 in ODI cricket. Now many would say कि Yeah, but he was smashing associate teams. But you look at his World Cup record as well. He batted very well in the World Cups. 2011 World Cup, he had a brilliant 100 against England in Nagpur. Like they scored 296 odd runs in 2011 and back in 2011 in Nagpur, and Nagpur is a big Indian ground. Then he scored 100 in, I think, against Ireland in Eden Gardens that year. So skill, a lot of these cricketers have quality. Vikramjeet Singh hai. He's very good for a 19-year-old. He's very good against pace.
Big,
Needs
that
to
big
work
six I saw.
needs to work upon his game against spin, जो कि होगा time के साथ. There's Scott Edwards. He was very good against England in that ODI series. So you need more games. Also इससे क्या हुआ कि rankings will start becoming true reflection of the skill. Now because these teams haven't even played against Bangladesh, तो बांग्लादेश की जो रैंकिंग है बिकॉज ऑफ दैट होम सीरीज अगेंस्ट न्यूजीलैंड एंड ऑस्ट्रेलिया लास्ट ईयर, they are ranked number 9 above Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, Scotland, Ireland, and Namibia. I don't think if there's a 6 team tournament happening between these teams that Bangladesh will qualify for the final. There is no way Bangladesh is a top 10 T20I team. Recent series जो थी अभी न्यूजीलैंड में, Bangladesh in 4 total matches combined took only 15 wickets. They are not able to take an average of 4 wickets per game against top nations. कुछ टीम्स होती हैं जैसे कमी होती है किसी किसी टीम में कि एक दो प्लेयर है, यू नो वेस्ट इंडीज का बैटिंग इज एन इशू, बट यू नो इफ जोसेफ गिव्स यू विकेट्स और होल्डर बोल्स टाइटली, ओबेड मकॉय डेथ में कर लेगा, तो वेस्ट इंडीज एटलीस्ट हैव द बॉलिंग टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट टीम्स कि 150 160 पे रोक सकते हैं. एंड वंस यू हैव अ टीम रिस्ट्रिक्टेड एट 150 160, तो ठीक है, देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी कि यू नीड समवन टू कम ऑफ, तो चेज हो जाएगा.
Correct,
You
correct.
know, Sri Lanka has Sri Lanka have a lot of bits and pieces players. There's Chamika Karuratne at 8. There is Shanaka who rarely bowls, and then there are two spinners who can really pull the game back. But Bangladesh के पास कौन है? You can't name a single player that Bangladesh have that you can say is an impact player, because they don't have an impact player. And my feeling is a lot of it is down to the pitches that they play in Bangladesh on, where it is not about posting a good total, it is just about posting a total, because आप 20 ओवर खेल गए, 120 रन बन गए, and that's a winning total.
And we've seen exactly, we've seen कि they've beaten Australia, West Indies, ऐसे टीम को वो घर पे मीरपुर पे हरा सकते हैं. बट पॉइंट ये है कि आपकी ग्रोथ क्या है, राइट? ये वर्ल्ड कप मीरपुर पे नहीं खेला जाएगा ना. सो आई एम ऑन द सेम पेज एज यू. बिल्कुल सही बात है. A lot of questions came कि सर ये आपने फोटो लगाया, ये क्या है भाई? ये T20 ब्लास्ट नहीं है, क्योंकि गुरकीरत और मैं नेदरलैंड्स के बारे में बात कर रहे थे. तो ये फोटो है नेदरलैंड्स का, जिन्होंने 2 मैचेस जीते हैं, एंड नाउ वेरी वेरी गुड टू सी दैट दे आर गोइंग इनटू द सेकंड राउंड. एब्सोल्युटली ग्रेट पॉइंट्स. बट क्योंकि मेरे ख्याल से हमारे व्यूअर्स कुछ लग रहा होगा ये लोग ये कहां बात कर रहे हैं हॉलैंड के बारे में. लेट्स गेट स्ट्रेट इनटू इट बिफोर वी मूव इनटू द डिस्कशन अबाउट Sunday's match. I'm going to put up a poll for our viewers here. दिस इज रिकॉर्डिंग द मैच ऑन द वीकेंड. फर्स्ट इज क्योंकि बारिश के बहुत बहुत आसार हैं, कभी कभी 80 कभी 90%. द फर्स्ट पोल फॉर आवर व्यूअर्स है, डू यू थिंक विल गेट अ फुल गेम? व्हाइल आवर व्यूअर्स type in their answers, let's get straight to it. I was looking good, Kirat. एक टाइम पे when I was growing up in the 90s, इंडिया पाकिस्तान बायलैटरल में फ्राइडे शारजा, ठीक है. अब वो फ्राइडे रिप्लेस हो गया भाई संडे से. 2015 दे मेट एट द एमसीजी ऑन अ संडे. 2017 चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी फाइनल एंड द लीग मैच was on a Sunday. 2019 का मैच ओल्ड ट्रैफर्ड, दैट वाज ऑन अ संडे. पिछले साल का जो T20 मैच ओपनर वो था संडे को. और अभी हाल ही में 2 मैच हमारे हुए एशिया कप में संडे को. नो सरप्राइजेस कि ये मैच भी है संडे को. मतलब दिस इज द ब्रॉडकास्टर एंड द आईसीसी कैशिंग इन ऑन दैट मार्की डेट, सेइंग भाई संडे को सब व्यूअर्स हमारे फ्री हैं, है ना?
हाँ, तो उस वक्त फ्राइडे में इसलिए भी शारजा में होता था ना, बिकॉज इन यूएई
Exactly.
फ्राइडे इज अ हॉलीडे.
Weekend,
It's
exactly.
a Friday and a Saturday weekend. It's
Exactly.
not Sunday. It's not a Saturday and a Sunday weekend. So you
Correct,
also
correct.
want crowds in the stadium. So that was the logic then. But yeah,
It's
I
like the
mean,
most big, like let's cash in on the biggest day of the week and give it to our fans at the best slot for the Asian audience also.
oh, of course, because and it gives you more ticket sales as well. It makes it more convenient,
बिल्कुल.
obviously. Uh, but yeah, weather could be an issue, and
भाई
yeah,
हाँ.
if it is a rain shortened game, goes without saying the team batting second has a huge advantage.
Correct. Let's let's get straight into it. I was thinking let's try and do like a SWOT analysis, because to me, and feel free to agree, disagree, as I know you will. हमारी बैटिंग स्ट्रेंथ है, उनकी बैटिंग मेरे हिसाब से वीकनेस है, क्योंकि बिकॉज देयर बॉलर्स आर सो गुड एंड वी सीन दैट रिजवान और बाबर जितने भी अच्छे हैं, द लॉन्गर दे बैट इट हैज गिवन द मिडल ऑर्डर which is virtually non-existent, less of a chance to bat. जब भी मौका आया है, I think this recent try series, they at least got a few things right. But man to man, let's start with the openers. एक तरफ रिजवान और बाबर, एक तरफ केएल राहुल और रोहित शर्मा. I know you have views on this because we've exchanged. मोहम्मद रिजवान बेशक नंबर वन है, but मेरे हिसाब से there are problems with the way he bats and the longer he bats.
So I personally think that this match is going to be decided between Pakistan's middle order and India's bowling. I think
Hmm.
Pakistan's bowling and India's batting will sort of neutralize each other. Maybe India's batting has a slight edge because of how everyone's coming back into form and the conditions. क्योंकि मेलबर्न में बॉल उतनी ग्रिप नहीं करेगी जितनी यूएई में करी थी. So
Correct.
even if Mohammad Nawaz is a factor, he's not as big of a factor. And you can see that with how Rashid fares in the BBL as well. Like players who a lot of Australian players who struggle to put bat on ball when it comes to playing Rashid in the IPL, they are able to play him quite decently in Australia. So I think India's batting might just be slightly ahead of Pakistan's bowling. You can expect them to come out on top, but uh, I feel that now that Fakar Zaman didn't bat in the last game and he's coming off injury, and Shan Masood on the other hand has now batted I think 11-12 games. I feel, and that one game where he opened in the warm up game, he showed why why opening is his best position. वैसे एक इनिंग से कुछ फर्क पड़ता नहीं है, but there's enough sample space. You see the PSL as well, and the reason for that is he doesn't have the power game. He has the conventional game where he'll time the ball. Now, my personal feeling is, and I think what they should do is they should move Babar to number three, and they should move uh, Shan Masood to open. One, it gives you a left hand right hand combination.
तब
Two,
है
it
प्रॉब्लम.
also allows it allows you to get more out of Shan Masood. And then Babar ने अगर anchoring ही करनी है, तो it's better to anchor from number three. Now you let your openers try and make as much use as they can of the power play. And again, Babar and Rizwan also don't really do well against off spin. एंड तो वो दोनों अगर बैटिंग कर रहे हैं तो अश्विन भी आ जाएंगे और फिर अक्षर पटेल भी गेम में आ जाते हैं या कोई भी आ जाता है. तो शान मसूद होंगे तो एटलीस्ट वो लेफ्ट आर्म स्पिनर का गेम में आना उतना ईजी नहीं है.
करेक्ट.
इसके अलावा India need to be wary of Mohammad Nawaz because he's been in decent touch, and he did smack India in that game where India lost in
बिल्कुल.
the Asia Cup. तो उसके लिए भी I think playing Ashwin becomes important because you have a else you have a left arm spinner and you have a leg spinner both turning the ball into the left hander. So I believe that is, and I think Babar चाहे जैसे भी खेले, बाबर की anchoring from the conditions become important because they are not really sure what is the role of a Haider Ali, what is the role of an Iftikhar,
Precisely.
and what is the role of someone like uh, Fakar if he bats at number three. What they know is कि okay, we know how to get more out of Shadab, we know how to get more out of Nawaz, and Asif Ali is fixed at number seven. बट बाकी तीन बैटर से आपने क्या कराना है आपको पता नहीं है. तो अगर बाबर नंबर थ्री पे आ जाते हैं तो यू कैन जस्ट गिव देम अ लाइसेंस कि ठीक है बाबर विल बैट थ्रू, बाकी बैटिंग करो. एंड दे नीड टू आस्क दे नीड टू टेल रिजवान दैट बाबर इज देयर टू एंकर, यू शुड गो फॉर योर
बिल्कुल
शॉट.
सही कहा.
The good thing for Pakistan is that they will play a few of their games where the square boundaries are short. Not in Melbourne. Melbourne में छोटी नहीं है. जहाँ पर square boundaries are short, over there, Rizwan can actually look to have fun because वैसे भी वो shots उनके पास leg side की हैं, वो hacks. So those hacks now can become even more useful. 60 मीटर की बाउंड्री है, I'll just premeditate जैसे
Yeah.
कुशल मेंडिस कर रहे थे in the last game. So these Pakistan also have had the advantage of being lucky with a few venues. India are playing South Africa at Perth. Pakistan are playing South Africa in Sydney, and then
बहुत
Pakistan
या
will be playing
बिल्कुल
two
सही पकड़े.
matches. Pakistan are playing two matches in Perth. One of them is against Netherlands, and the other will probably be against Bangladesh. वो दो मैच आप सीधा सीधा बारिंग अ मिरेकल यू कैन से कि ये तो पाकिस्तान के खाते में जा ही रहे हैं, क्योंकि देयर पेस बॉलिंग बिकम्स अ ह्यूज डिफरेंशिएटर एट अ स्टेडियम लाइक पर्थ। एंड आई थिंक दे आर ऑल्सो प्लेइंग वन मोर गेम एट गैबा। ये वेन्यूज ऐसे हैं कि यहाँ पर अगर उनकी बैटिंग उतनी अच्छी नहीं भी है ना, देयर पेसर्स कैन होल्ड देयर ओन एंड कैन इंश्योर कि अगर पहले बॉलिंग कर रही है, नॉट लेट द ऑपोजिशन स्कोर मोर देन 150। फिर एक बारी 140 150 की रेंज में आ गया ना, तो देन बाबर रिजवान आंख बंद करके चाहे जैसे जो अपना टेम्पलेट खेलना है खेले, देन अ विन और मोर और लेस इज 80% guaranteed. Pakistan have had this very good advantage of the venues that they
Venues,
are
yes.
playing.
That's a very, very good point. हम पेस पे आएंगे इनके. Before that, I'm just gonna put up another poll. The result of the last poll was which is weaker, India's pace attack or Pakistan's middle order. 54% of our viewers agreed that Pakistan's middle order is the problem. हमने बात किया इस पे आएंगे. I'm gonna put up one other poll for us. Can both teams make the semi-finals? Now, before we come to Afridi, who's come back, and Haris Roth, two things I'm gonna pick up from what you said, which I've also been wondering. Ashwin की बात आपने करी because there the number of left-handers in Bumrah's absence. I believe you need someone very experienced, and though he's not a fast bowler, he's a very canny spinner with arguably a fast bowler's mind. But जो दूसरा स्पिनर है, क्योंकि भाई दो स्पिनर्स खेलेंगे, I think Ashwin should come in place of Chahal, and like you said, it should be Akshar and अश्विन. अब अक्षर के पास ज्यादा अनुभव नहीं है ऑस्ट्रेलिया में, बट फैक्ट इज ही इज योर मोस्ट फॉर्म स्पिनर गोइंग along राइट नाउ. आई वुड नॉट वांट टू ब्रेक दैट. एंड यस, अलग कंडीशंस, कानपुर, गुवाहाटी, फिलाना ढिमकाना, बट पावर प्ले के अंदर इस बंदे का एक रोल चल रहा है. आई वुड वांट टू सी दैट एक्सटेंडेड. योर व्यू ऑन दैट बिफोर वी मूव फॉरवर्ड ऑन द टू स्पिनर्स.
एक और चीज है, in a ground like Melbourne where the boundaries are bigger, it
हाँ.
also becomes a little more easier for a finger spinner to bowl, because आपने अगर सोच लिया कि मैंने यही लाइन डालनी है, आप रिस्क भी ले सकते हो ना. लाइक इंडियन ग्राउंड्स में यू कांट टेक दैट रिस्क. लाइक if you are bowling at Indore or Guwahati, or even say वानखेड़े और these grounds, यू कान टेक द रिस्क कि ठीक है अगर शॉट मारने जाएगा तो बाउंड्री पे कैच हो जाएगा. वो नहीं होने, वो वाला रिस्क आप इंडियन ग्राउंड्स पे ले नहीं सकते अनलेस यू आर प्लेइंग एट अ हैदराबाद और अ नागपुर, या आप चेपॉक पे लंबी साइड की तरफ बॉलिंग कर रहे हो. वो हो नहीं सकता. यहाँ पर वो पॉसिबिलिटी है. सो यू कैन, आप एक लाइन पकड़ के डाल सकते हो कि मारना है तो ठीक है लेग साइड पे मारे वेयर इट इज़ एन 80 मीटर बाउंड्री. इफ ही क्लियर्स द 80 मीटर बाउंड्री देन ठीक है, props to the batsman. He's cleared that 80 meter boundary, low percentage shot भी कर लिया. But you have to play the percentages right. So that way Akshar becomes important. And then the point is, if you don't have Akshar, then your batting ends at 6, and
बिल्कुल.
that is never never an ideal proposition. So you need Akshar anyhow. चाहे आप उनकी बुल, आपके पास और कोई, या फिर आप हुड्डा को लेके आओ. अगर आप हुड्डा को लेके आते हो तो हुड्डा हैज नॉट प्लेड एनीथिंग
And he
सिंस
never
दैट.
bowls. Rohit rarely bowls him nowadays.
बिकॉज अगेन लोग ये तो सोच लेते हैं कि हुड्डा इज एन ऑफ स्पिनर, बट मैचअप्स में भी क्वालिटी चाहिए ना. अब फॉर द सेक ऑफ इट, लाइक if you have two right handers batting on the crease, right, and you know both of them struggle against leg spin, and you don't have a leg spinner, you are not going to ask Shreyas Iyer to bowl that leg spinner, because leg spin उसकी land नहीं होगी, full toss पड़ेगी. तो once it's a full toss it doesn't make a difference if it's a leg spin or an off spin, it's a full toss. So quality also comes in play somewhere, and Hooda has not played any game in, I don't think he played the warm ups. I don't. He wasn't a part of that or South Africa series. He didn't play any game against Australia.
Only
And
played those two games in Perth against the Western Australia second 11. That's it.
uh,
Bas वही
that
है. That's not
and
enough.
and number 7 is not his position. It's like
Exactly.
wasting a
Exactly.
batter. So might as well play Akshar at 7 and then have four bowlers. I think there's only one decision that India needs to make, is that do they want to go with Shami or do they want to go with Harshal? I
Yes.
think it's as simple as that. If you go with Shami, then the idea should be कि you front load your bowling with Shami and Bhuvneshwar,
Correct.
and ask them कि भाई तुम निकाल लो दो तीन विकेट, बिकॉज आपने वहां दो तीन विकेट निकाल ली तो आप डेथ में ज़्यादा रन खा नहीं पाओगे, और अगर खा भी लोगे तो आपने डैमेज काफ़ी मिनिमाइज कर लिया
बिल्कुल
अगेंस्ट साउथ
सही.
अफ्रीका, which doesn't have Pretorius at 7 now. It will only have a Parnell or a Marco Jansen. Again, a short batting lineup. वहां पर दो तीन विकेट निकालना really really saves you 20 runs to the eventual total, or probably even more. तो वो है, if Shami can get his act together. But then एक ही ओवर डाला है शमी ने, और वो एक ओवर में
And
it's like that for me. इट वुड हैव स्टिल बीन अ क्वेश्चन, मतलब अगर वो शमी 7-8 रन 3 बॉल्स में भी खा जाते, और पता क्या है, पब्लिक परसेप्शन ऐसी होती, इफ नॉट फॉर दैट विराट कोहली कैच, दैट मैच वुड हैव बीन, दैट ओवर वुड हैव बीन डन इन 3 बॉल्स, तब सब बोलते हैं कि शमी को क्यों ले गए. नाउ एवरीवन's लाइक ओके, शमी's become better, he's become better than Bhuvi. Bhuvi's taken most wickets for India in T20 as this year.
Yeah, yeah.
So ये perceptions का काफी खेला है in terms of public eye. I'm really not sure, and it is one decision which I am also not sure of. I think ये this decision will ultimately boil down to आपने जिसको खिलाया, अगर तो वो अच्छा परफॉर्म कर गया तो वो मास्टर स्ट्रोक है, अगर तो वो अच्छा परफॉर्म नहीं करा तो देन आपकी, लाइक द पब्लिक परसेप्शन इज कि आपको जितनी क्रिकेट आती है सब बकवास है. इट्स अ वेरी 50-50 कॉल, देयर इज रियली नॉट मच टू चूज.
There, yeah, I
एंड
agree.
इट्स लाइक आगे खाई पीछे कुआ, या फिर वो वैसी वाली बात है
And
कि
that
चल चल गया तो कोई भी चल गया, नहीं चला तो नहीं चला, क्योंकि हर्षल की भी फॉर्म इज नॉट बीन गुड, एंड he's not done a lot either. But again, Melbourne, big ground, slower balls can stick into the wicket, and
that's
can
so
bring
That's the
bowling.
exact thing because अभी हम fans, हम analysts, जो भी हैं, whatever you want to call us, because we're all at the end of the day, we're watching this team so closely. हम इसी बात पे हैं, and I get the same impression कि यहाँ भी team की thinking ऐसी है, ठीक है? I put up a poll, 56% said the third pacer should be Shami. I get where that's come. There's a recency bias कि बंदे ने आके चार बॉल पे चार विकेट लिए, but you rightly said a lot of it was down to विराट कोहली's catch. पर अगर हम उस मैच पे जाते हैं, मैच से पहले रोहित शर्मा ने वही कहा कि नहीं नहीं, वी नो एग्जैक्टली व्हाट और 11 इज, ये प्रैक्टिस मैच है, राइट? नाउ जिस शमी ने पूरे मैच में कुछ नहीं किया था, he comes in and a match which that Australian team, despite it being a warm up, were on line to win. That match gets changed. बट लाइक यू राइटली सर, हर्षल का उसी मैच में 19th ओवर, वी ऑल नो कि 19th ओवर कितना बड़ा मुसीबत है रोहित की टीम के लिए इस साल, वी नो दैट. He takes two wickets and gives only 5 runs. So you're essentially, because as much as Rohit and Dravid can say, they will look at what happened in this last match. मेरे हिसाब से हर्षल 19वां ओवर में, प्रॉब्लमैटिक ओवर में, 2 विकेट 5 रन. शमी जो शायद उस मैच में उससे पहले he might not have been considered, he ends up with some 4 wickets. Is this recency bias? Do you think it's going to impact the 11? और वाकई में इन लोगों ने लॉक किया कि हमें क्या खेलना है, unless the rain comes and has a huge say in the match.
See, from what I have seen, this duo operate with, uh, the one thing is ki they don't panic that much on the basis of results, and I think that's an outstanding quality for a coach and the captain, given the fickle nature of that format. मतलब mind goes back to that South Africa series जहाँ पर पहले 2 मैच हार गए थे, and every left, right, and center there are calls of ये change करो, drop Ruturaj, drop Chahal, drop this
हाँ.
player, but they stuck with the same team and then they won 2 matches. And the very good part about that series is that they won both of those matches while batting first. So जो कन्विक्शन है आइडियाज में, वो तो इनकी है ही है, राइट? एंड वो झलकती भी है. एंड ऑल्सो अनदर थिंग इज दैट विच एवर प्लेयर दैट दे हैव ड्रॉप्ड, दे हैव गिवन दैट प्लेयर इनफ चांसेस. ये बात हमने पहले भी करी थी इसी शो पे. आवेश को ड्रॉप किया, बट आवेश को 10-11 मैचेस दिए बिफोर ही
बिल्कुल
वॉज
सर.
ड्रॉप. ऋषभ पंत को 11 से बाहर किया आफ्टर गिविंग हिम अ डिसेंट स्ट्रेच. हाँ, पोजीशंस की आप बात कर सकते हो, बट दैट वाज बिकॉज दे थिंक कि जो टॉप 3 है दैट हैज मोर क्वालिटी देन पंत एट दिस मोमेंट, और व्हाट पंत इज प्रोवाइडिंग, एंड दे गेव हिम चांसेस. श्रेयस अय्यर को ड्रॉप किया, गेव हिम चांसेस. And if Chahal gets dropped again, he can't complain because he's gotten enough chances, or Bhuvneshwar can't complain. So they tend to stuck with players. So even if they give, if they go ahead with Harshal, I won't be surprised because they will be cognizant of the fact that before injury, Harshal was delivering.
Sure.
Like before the IPL as well, Harshal did bowl well. There was this game, heavy dew, I think in March in Eden Gardens, heavy dew, and Harshal got 3 batters out, and one was to a slower ball, the other was to Yorker, the third one was to a short ball. So if they think कि Harshal is getting his dip back, and he got out, he dismissed Aaron Finch, who was looking great. मतलब Aaron Finch couldn't believe it कि वो उस वक्त out हो गए, because he was completely beaten by the dip. So I won't be surprised if they stick with Harshal because Shami hasn't had game time. the way both of them have operated, chances of Harshal playing is far more. But even if they go for Shami, I'll understand what the logic is.
What the
But if
logic
there
is?
is rain around, then I think Shami might just get in. If it's a clear day where they feel ki it's, it could be a 20 over game, then I think they'll stick with Harshal. But if it is a game around where they feel there's a nip in the air, ball move ho sakti hai, then they might just make that change. Ki ball move ho rahi hai, we need wickets up front, and our best bet is to unleash Bhuvi and Shami, and then hope that they come. And कभी कभी क्या होता है कि you bowl well but you don't get wickets. Like the first ODI in Lucknow, Avesh and Siraj bowled beautifully in the first 10 overs, wicket nahi mili, and Shardul came and just got that wicket out of nowhere. So that also happens. But yeah, it's a tough call regardless of which way you go with. But I think logics, given how they have operated, and logic suggests that they will probably tend to back the player with more game time.
Correct.
लोग शमी की एक्सपीरियंस की बात करते हैं, बट शमी हैज बोल्ड only for one T20I. He's played one T20I in Australia, and he's only played 17 T20Is across his career. Harshal has more experience of playing T20 internationals.
I
People
think he's
forget.
played more this year than Shami's played in his whole 9 year career for India.
एग्जैक्टली तो वो लोग थोड़ा कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं कि
Correct.
एक्सपीरियंस ही, although I feel कि skills are transferable, right,
Sure.
between formats, but new ball skill is definitely transferable with Shami. But अगर नहीं है swing, तो then
Yeah.
what? Because
Yeah.
uh, at death Shami is a very hit and a miss. पता नहीं, it's a very difficult call to make,
It's
which I
a
said
tough call.
which
And
will only be judged in hindsight after the game. तो वो है.
but fact ये भी है कि since the IPL is seen as that breeding ground for all of India's T20 squads, जायज भी है ज्यादा एक हद तक. But in this IPL where Shami's team went so far, he only bowled 11 overs at the death. So जब
हाँ,
उसको
because
franchise is not viewing him as a death bowler. Indian team तो बहुत पीछे है फिर ना. This is why this guy Arshdeep Singh is so important.
और जो जब जब शमी ने वो ओवर्स डाले भी है ना, जैसे देयर वाज दिस गेम इन देयर वाज दिस गेम इन ब्राबॉन अगेंस्ट पंजाब, वेयर दे थॉट कि अब तो सब आउट हो गए, बिकॉज शाहरुख वाज डिसमिस्ड, सो
हाँ.
वाज जितेश शर्मा, सो दे वर 6 or 7 डाउन एनीवे. दे थॉट अब शमी को बॉलिंग करा लेते हैं. But Shami did take the wicket of Rahul Chahar, but he went for runs as well. So शमी को जब भी डेथ पे शमी को गुजरात टाइटंस ने एज अ डेथ बॉलर वैसे ही यूज किया था जैसे सीएस के दीपक चाहर को करती है. लाइक व्हेन यू हैव एब्सोल्युटली नो ऑप्शन, or when you think the game's already done, okay, then you throw in the ball. So in that case those stats aren't a true reflection कि क्या वो एक्चुअली, क्योंकि अगर आप टेल को बॉलिंग कर रहे हो, राइट, योर मार्जिन ऑफ एरर इंक्रीजेस, एंड इफ यू हैव ऑलरेडी सील्ड द गेम, देन यू कैन ऑल्सो बिकम मोर कॉन्फिडेंट कि अच्छा अभी तो मैं गेम सील कर देता हूँ, लेट मी गो फॉर अ लो परसेंटेज ऑप्शन, लाइक लेट मी ट्राई यॉर्कर. जब जब गेम सील हो जाती है ना, जो बॉलर यॉर्कर नहीं भी ट्राई करता, ही ऑल्सो ट्राइज फॉर इट, एंड बिकॉज देर इज ग्रेटर मार्जिन ऑफ एरर, तो कॉन्फिडेंस में डिलीवर भी हो जाती है. I have not. I know people will go back to that super over, but that super over against Mumbai was 2 years ago, and again 1 over. अब एक
Correct.
इनिंग्स के बेसिस पे तो
बहुत
आप
पहले की
किसी
बात
को
है.
बेटर डिक्लेयर कर नहीं सकते कौन किससे है. तो लिमिटेशंस तो हैं अभी with Shami the T20 bowler,
Hmm.
but again, and we don't know how he is bowling in the nets. बहुत मुश्किल है कुछ सजेस्ट करना.
मुश्किल है. I put up a poll while we are talking. Who's the bigger threat to India, Shaheen Afridi or Haris Rauf? 62% are saying Shaheen Afridi. शायद अभी सबके जहन में वो पिछले साल का ओवर बाकी है. Before we wind up, I'm going to put one more poll to the team. Who has a better chance of winning, India or Pakistan? जब तक पोल के नतीजे आते हैं, I know गुरकिरत बारिश के बहुत आसार हैं. 80%, 90%. This La Nina जो भी है, it has given Australia one of their wettest periods ever. If we get a match, jitna bhi ho, all that we talked about, who has the edge? If we get a full game, who has the edge? If it's a 5 over 7 overs, फिर वहां पे who has the edge?
Shorter game helps India because
Hmm.
I think Indian batters in a shorter game have more shots and range to score quicker. Shorter game definitely helps India,
Correct.
no doubt. Bigger game will come down to a few factors, like I said, between Pakistan's middle order and India's bowling. आपने पूछा कि बिगर थ्रेट कौन है इफ देयर इज नो रेन एंड इफ इट्स अ नॉर्मल सनी डे, then I think India have more issues in countering Shadab and Nawaz rather than any of their pacers, because abhi recently
Good grounds,
uh,
yeah.
cricket.com, since the beginning of World T20 had released a stat that India's numbers against pace bowling are the best. Like, they have the least balls per boundary. They are averaging better against pace. They are only second to South Africa in terms of losing a wicket to pace. They lose a wicket to pace up every 20.5 balls. Their run rate against pace is upwards of 8.5. क्या होता है, पब्लिक मेमोरी ना बड़ी, इट टेंड्स टू रिमेंबर द बिगर मोमेंट्स, तो वो बिगर मोमेंट्स में क्या होता है कि यू थिंक बिकॉज शाहीन ने आउट किया था तो शाहीन हैज बिकम अ ट्रबल ऑल ऑफ अ सडन, राइट? इट्स
That's
नॉट
not.
दैट केस, बिकॉज अगर शाहीन शाहीन ने उस मैच में विकेट्स निकाले, एट द सेम पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इफ यू चेक स्टार्क्स रिकॉर्ड अगेंस्ट इंडिया, he I think his worst record is against India, and Stark's a left arm pacer as well. So sometimes क्या होता है, वो बड़े मैच में जो आप देख लेते हो, that becomes a common notion.
And you judge them against those bigger matches. ठीक, I get it.
So I don't think, and also Shaheen's coming off injury, so you really don't know how lethal he will be. I think the most important pacer at present for Pakistan is Haris Rauf, because he's been extremely consistent. Has had a economy rate of 8 bowling at the death. Asia Cup से अच्छी bowling कर रहे हैं. He was good against England as well. Good against New Zealand and Bangladesh. Haris Rauf is their most important pacer, and Haris Rauf has played the BBL. He's played for Melbourne Stars.
Exactly.
He's
ये वहीं
played
से तो आए हैं ये. That's his second
he's played,
home.
he's played at MCG, and he probably has played more at MCG than than barring a Kohli and a Rohit Sharma, and maybe to some extent Ashwin. But पूरे 22 प्लेयर्स जो खेलने वाले हैं उनमें से शायद हो सकता है कि ही माइट बी द थर्ड मोस्ट एक्सपीरियंस प्लेयर ऑफ
Yep.
in terms of playing at MCG. So yeah, I mean he's definitely their key
Correct.
pace in this game. Naseem Shah ने again he get Naseem Shah बहुत बहुत ज़्यादा extremes में vary करते हैं. Like, he's capable of giving you a 3 for 20 performance, and at the same time he's capable of giving you a 0 for 45 performance, and that happens when you are a young express pacer, which is why I remember जब हम आवेश की बात करते थे, and मैंने काफ़ी बारी बोला है, to young pacers who you expect to bowl hard lengths and bowl 140 plus, you need to allow for a greater margin of error, because किसी किसी दिन it will only be pace and the line and length will not land. It will not land, and you can't help it, because control comes with more and more bowling, with more and more practice. It doesn't it's not a switch कि आज आप कंट्रोल के साथ bowling कर रहे हो, आज आप नहीं कर
No
रहे हो.
room for it. बिल्कुल, yeah, yeah.
So that is I think, that is why I don't think that, you know bigger threat for me, I feel, is how India play with spinners, because left arm spin के against जो हमारे टॉप फोर का जो रिकॉर्ड है वो बहुत अच्छा नहीं है. इवन इफ दे डोंट गेट आउट टू देम, दे डोंट
Don't
स्कोर
score.
अ लॉट अगेंस्ट दैट.
Precisely.
वी आर लकी दैट अभी खुशदील शाह नहीं खेल रहे, बट इफ पाकिस्तान वांट टू बी मोर टैक्टिकल, दे कैन ब्रिंग इन खुशदील शाह फॉर हैदर अली. हैदर अली रन तो अभी बैट से बना नहीं रहे ज़्यादा, तो
Mm.
आप ले आओ खुशदील को एंड आस्क हिम टू डू दैट जॉब. एंड for someone who bats at number 6, or you need someone who's batting at number 6, Khushdeal Shah might just do a better job than Heather Ali, because he does that for his team in PSL. और मेरे को उस टीम का नाम नहीं याद आ रहा कि if it was Lahore Qalandars or it was it Quetta, I'm not sure.
No, it's going to be a cracker of a game जो भी होता है because of all these factors, the matchups. And you're right. I mean, I remember Mitchell Santner, Ish Sodi just tying down India in that second match जो पिछले World Cup में पाकिस्तान के बाद हारने के बाद. So it's there. So there is a clear problem.
Just you'll be surprised to see Ish Sodi, apart from that game against India, did nothing in that World Cup.
Correct.
He went for runs against Scotland. I
That
remember
is the image
Scotland
of
उसको
Sodi I also have.
स्कॉटलैंड ने उसको रन मारे, एंड he goes for a lot of runs against top member teams. He was smacked very recently by Pakistan also. Ish Sodi has a major control problem, but that was not just our day, and we didn't plan it this way, but it ended up happening that we had two of our worst players of spin facing Santner and Sodi. And at that point of time, they didn't even, like, not that they could barely play a lot of shots given the situation. they didn't even have those low percentage boundary shots कि अच्छा मैं reverse कर लूँ या मैं like I can hit the paddle sweep. Both Rohit and Virat don't place those shots, so they were just stuck looking to
Which
take
is
a
why
single.
Kohli is the most important batsman now because of exactly that.
And India wanted to plug this with Pant, but again, you can't blame the coach and captain for backing someone like Pant and Pant not delivering, क्योंकि बहुत chances मिले हैं. And अब आप ये नहीं बोल सकते कि पंत को बैक करना सही डिसीजन नहीं था. That's stupid.
It's not.
हाँ, तो वो वाली बात है.
बिल्कुल.
काफी ये इस मैनेजमेंट के साथ काफी हुआ है. दे हैव backed a few players who have not delivered. Avesh Khan, another example. If Avesh was delivering, right? So getting a replacement for Bumrah wouldn't have been so tough, and they wouldn't have had to wait till the last moment. क्योंकि आवेश को गेम्स दिए थे because he had done well in the previous IPL and this IPL. He was taking a wicket every 15 balls in in power play every 15 balls this IPL. Did have a few bad games, but not as bad as he's been for India. Where it's just that कि uh, every over you think अच्छा ये तो 10 रन अभी हो गए,
Yeah, yeah.
उतना
No,
बुरा भी नहीं
it's,
था.
and I think the key part is that yes, like you said, इनको at least एक लंबी रस्सी मिली है, which a lot of teams in the recent past could say, yeah, हमें players would have said, okay, we have not got that chance, but we've absolutely run out of time. Always a pleasure talking to you, Gurkirat. Thank you for joining. I know you're off to Australia. Enjoy yourself there. Take some good luck for the Indian team, and when you're back, we'll catch up with you again.
Sure, Jamie. Like I said, हमेशा मजा आता है. And you know why it's nice to talk to someone like you is because the difference that I see between you and other people who've become popular in this space of cricket journalist or analyst. I don't know whether you want to be called as a journalist or not, but
Yeah, that जो
काफी
भी
क्या
बोलो.
है that lines have become very blurred. इसकी आप जो हो ना आप वो क्लीशेस की बात नहीं करते. लाइक यू हैव यू यू लुक एट द गेम डीपली. आप फिर क्वेश्चंस भी वैसे पूछते हो. वरना कुछ कुछ लोग क्या होते हैं कि वो गेम के साथ अपडेटेड ही नहीं हुए. वो 2022 में वो वाली बात करेंगे जो 2015 में भी वैलिड नहीं थी. तो फिर बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है उन शोज पे कि आप अगर आपका आपसे जो क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है उसी को ही नहीं समझ आ रही कि वो क्वेश्चन क्या पूछ रहा है तो आप आंसर क्या दोगे. और ऐसे अनफॉर्चुनेटली ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हो गए.
Yeah, yeah.
And it becomes it becomes difficult to then break the myths.
But you're very kind for saying that. And दूसरी बात बिल्कुल, I get exactly where you come, and I know where you're coming from, and I know you also sat on such shows back in the day in studios, so I get exactly where you're coming from. वो वाली बात, but absolute pleasure. Thank you. Have a great time in Australia, and keep busting myths with your stats and your views on social media, on your channel, and of course on cricket.com as well. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, bye,
Bye.
Jimmy.